Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's dive into a story about an unexpected encounter at a Target store where a simple wardrobe choice spirals into chaos. A red shirt leads to a case of mistaken identity, a frustrated customer, and an amusing showdown involving an actual manager. This tale shows how a small misunderstanding can escalate into a hilarious situation with a truly memorable ending. Stay tuned. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. When I got fired from Target for not working there. When the amiibo craze started in 2014, I would search everywhere for any that I didn't have. Fortunately, I lived close to a Target, so I decided to see if they had any Jigglypuff amiibo. I usually wear a dress shirt and tie, so many people assume I'm the manager, but in reality, I am also a customer. However, today, when it came to getting dressed, I decided to wear a red t-shirt with the logo on it because I'm capable of such stupidity. I started to go to the electronics on the second floor of Target when I got there, but before I could even get to the escalator, a woman, whom I'll now call Elle, decided to tap me on the shoulder. Elle said, "Hey, do you know where the furniture is?" Me. "Yeah, I think so." She gazed at me as if a third arm had grown out of my forehead, and after a few seconds of stillness, she broke the ice. "Elle, you believe you're unaware? How might an employee be unaware of its location?" Me. "Ma'am, I don't what?" She interrupted. Elle said, "I don't want your excuses. You're just lazy. And remember, the customer is always right." By this time, I knew that I was the one wearing red to Target, but her attitude was intolerable, so I decided to play tricks on her. Me. "Oh, you are so correct. Thanks to patrons like you, I can keep my job here and keep getting those checks for $0. Elle, it's good you finally see the error of your ways. I decided to leave for my amiibo hunt after realizing that this is pointless. Elle, where do you think you're going? Me. Electronics, 'cause I don't... Elle, no you're not. I want to speak to your manager. Fortunately, a manager happened to be passing by due to another matter and heard this woman requesting a manager. M, what seems to be the problem here? Elle said, "Your employee is being disrespectful and I want him fired right now." The manager saw that I don't actually work here and that my attire doesn't even fit the dress code. M, I'm sorry, but he... L, I don't care. I want him fired. The manager turned to face me, so I nodded and winked slightly, hoping he would do as she said. You're fired? M, the woman began to grin as though she had won. Cool, I said, turning to face the woman. Now, F off. I heard her say to the manager as I was leaving, and she looked like I had just spat on her dog or something. L, that's right. You would let an employee say something like that to a customer? M says, he doesn't work here, lady. I quickly left after finding a Bowser amiibo. All in all, I considered the day to be good. Wow, this story is the epitome of customers always wrong. First of all, props to you for turning an awkward situation into a personal comedy show. You had no obligation to help her, but you still tried, only for her to weaponize her entitlement. Honestly, though, wearing a red shirt to Target's like walking into a zoo with a bucket of fish. You're going to attract attention. But it worked out in the end, especially since you snagged a Bowser amiibo. Petty wins and collectible victories, that's a good day in my book. And our second story. How I followed my manager's rules a little too perfectly. I work at a discount store as a cashier. I won't mention anything more since it would be too obvious and I might get in trouble. Last year, I, 28-year-old female, informed my store manager, SM22M, that I would not mind temporarily taking over as another manager in order to assist in times of need until he could locate a replacement for the departing manager. Everything went smoothly. Additionally, I ended up alternating between the deadbeat store near to my home and my original one. I don't want to go into why I didn't stay at the deadbeat. I was able to retain the manager job, the wage increase, and the benefits when I returned to my original store. I was $5 down one day for some reason. I've never experienced this before. Since I'd been absent for several months due to deadbeat store troubles, SM assumed it was because I had used these privileges without calling my teammate. the wonderful manager, AM, over for supervision. Then SM instructed me to contact management whenever I needed to perform any task that a typical cashier couldn't complete without doing so. Cue malicious compliance. That's exactly what I did the following day. I phoned management over whenever I made a multi-purchase of 24 or more products, accompany a sale, supervisor, trade, yes, manager. I'd informed AM that this was what I intended to do. After the second time, she gave me her code because she was too busy really operating the store and thought I could handle the work. I did this with SM on that day. I paged him a second time and he responded, "Just do what you need. Let me know when you use your code at the end of the day." It felt amazing, even though it was tiny. Edit. I want to make it known that I truly adore my management. They appreciate my efforts and make me feel really welcome, particularly considering how many times I've had to take a day or two off due to illness or childcare concerns. According to what I hear, SM started fresh out of high school and put in a lot of effort to get where he is now. He took over my store after all the staff left a year and a half ago since he had a close relationship with our district manager, DM. Since SM is a really kind guy, I wanted to let him know that given how busy we usually are during my shift, he didn't need anyone to watch over my shoulder. There was never anything in writing that required me to call. There was no purpose. Since the beginning of the interaction was secret, the conclusion was also private. I enjoy my job and my customers, so I didn't want to push it too far because I knew it would mess with the flow of things. For me, it's soon therapeutic. I live in Canada too, specifically the West Coast, even though I'm from OG Canada or the Panhandle. I'm aware that it doesn't really matter, but the minimum wage here is higher than what my southern brothers and sisters have told me. Honestly, this is a textbook example of how to follow orders too well. You gave SM exactly what they asked for and then some. It's hilarious how quickly their tune changed once they realized the inefficiency of constantly having to supervise someone who clearly knows what they're doing. You turned their micromanaging into a teachable moment. The best part's how AM and even SM eventually just handed over their codes or told you to do your thing. It's almost like they learned to trust you through sheer exasperation. Well played. And the fact that you didn't let it escalate or disrupt the store shows a level of professionalism most people wouldn't have had in that situation. And our last story. When our nightmare neighbors met, their match in parking karma. 2 years ago, a new family moved into our quiet, cozy neighborhood, and let me tell you, they've made those 2 years feel like an eternity. Before they arrived, this place was idyllic. Neighbors chatting over fences, kids playing in the street, and the occasional block party. Then they showed up, and the peace shattered like glass. From day one, they were impossible to ignore. Their dog barked at all hours, their yelling matches echoed down the street, and their house seemed to host a never-ending parade of trash and noise. But the real kicker? They trained their massive German Shepherd to fetch newspapers. Other people's newspapers. Watching that dog trot down the street with my elderly neighbor, Mr. Raymond's Sunday paper clenched in its jaws was both impressive and infuriating. And as if stealing the paper wasn't enough, they once hacked off Mrs. Prescott's prized roses for a bouquet. She nearly cried when she saw the bare stems. We tried everything, friendly conversations, inviting them to barbecues, even helping shovel their driveway during a particularly brutal snowstorm. Nothing worked. They just didn't care. But their parking antics? That was a whole new level of obnoxious. Parking in this neighborhood is tight. Most houses have narrow driveways and the streets are packed, especially on weekends. But these people? They had 5 cars for 4 drivers and seemed to think the entire street was their personal garage. They'd leave their driveway empty while their cars blocked other driveways or sat outside someone else's house for weeks on end. One morning, I stepped outside and saw my neighbor, Linda, struggling to maneuver her car out of her driveway because their SUV was so close to her bumper. "Hey, can you give me a hand?" she called. I walked over to help guide her out and muttered, "These people are something else, huh?" "You're telling me," she replied, shaking her head. "Last week, they parked so close to my driveway, I had to Uber to work." Eventually, our retired neighbor, Mr. Franklin, decided he'd had enough and went to the city to check the parking laws. When he returned, he grinned like a man with a plan. A few days later, yellow curbs were freshly painted around every driveway on our street, regulations about keeping clear access, apparently. It felt like a small victory, but we weren't prepared for what came next. A few weeks later, my husband's car broke down and he had to call a tow truck. While chatting with the driver, he vented about our neighbors and their parking stunts. The driver chuckled and said, "You know, if they're parking illegally, you can call the non-emergency line. If they get ticketed, I can tow them at their expense. Just say the word." That same week, we had dinner with a couple we'd recently met. The husband, Sam, happened to be a police officer. Over drinks, I mentioned our parking nightmare. "If I'm on duty in your area, I'll swing by," he said. "If I see anything illegal, I'll ticket him. Might teach him a lesson." Fast forward to Saturday night, the teenage son decided to throw a party, and I swear every single guest parked in the yellow zones or outright blocked someone's driveway. My husband peeked out the window and muttered, "They're daring us, aren't they?" I smiled. Let's give them what they're asking for. I texted Sam, our officer friend, and told him about the situation. He was already on board, but I had an idea to make it even sweeter. I called the tow truck driver and filled him in. "If they're ticketed, can you get a couple of trucks to clear them out?" I asked. "Absolutely," he replied. "I'll round up a few guys." The stage was set. Around 9 p.m., Sam and two other officers came through the neighborhood, ticketing every car parked illegally. Meanwhile, the tow trucks were stationed a few blocks away, ready to roll. I made an anonymous call about an underage drinking party, knowing the officers would show up to investigate. As the cops knocked on the door, the party went dead silent. Lights off, music cut, classic teenage panic. While they tried to figure out what to do, the tow trucks swept in like a well-oiled machine. 5 cars were hauled away before anyone inside even realized. The best part? The teens inside were too scared to come out and argue, knowing they'd out themselves for underage drinking. The party fizzled out, and the street fell blissfully quiet. By Sunday morning, 3 of the cars were back, parked just shy of the yellow lines. My husband smirked as we installed new security cameras. "Think they've learned their lesson?" he asked. "For now," I replied, watching the family shuffle around, visibly embarrassed. "But I'm keeping the tow guy on speed dial just in case." These neighbors sound like the textbook definition of nightmare. The fact that their antics pushed Mr. Franklin, of all people, to dig into parking laws was the first clue they'd gone too far. But teaming up with a tow truck driver and a police officer? That was a masterstroke of petty brilliance. Let's hope they finally learned that community doesn't mean free for all, and having that tow guy on speed dial, genius. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.